Hey, what's up, everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. All right, so I'm listening to content from guys like Sean Davis and Dan, the Lakers fan. Shout out to those guys. I really enjoy what they do. Uh, Essentially, the word on the street is that Anthony Davis has asked the Lakers for a big. We talked about it a little bit yesterday as I saw a meme that was stating that, and so I kind of make a joke about it, and proceeded to talk about how I was just a little frustrated with the circumstances, that we have no flexibility or maneuverability to improve, it seems. Based on the lack of movement, one could assume that, there's more to be done, but maybe not the possibility of actually doing it responsibly. But I guess there's more reports out. Dave McMenamin, I guess, has written a article, and in that article it was stated that Anthony Davis wants a center to play with. That I wasn't aware of yesterday when I saw the meme, so didn't really get into it. I haven't read the article, of course, but I did make a video about maybe about 11 days ago or something like that, talking about just a solution that I saw that could potentially be possible for the Lakers to maybe get the center from the Chicago Bulls. Not in love with that particular piece of what's his name, Vucevic. I think he's a nice center, but he's had his injury issues and kind of hitting father time a little bit. I think not really a defensive anchor kind of guy, but can definitely help Anthony Davis on the offensive end, taking pressure off him on the boards as well, so that he can focus more on what it is he's good at, which is playing defense, particularly off ball. Maybe put Vucevic on some of those hardcore big centers, and even though you don't expect him to stop him, Anthony Davis would be there hovering and roaming. Get Vanderbilt back, he'd be hovering and roaming if we were able to keep Vanderbilt in such a trade, which I do have my doubts about, by the way. But nevertheless, that might be kind of the most feasible solution. I think the Chicago Bulls are not in the most advantageous position from which to negotiate at this point, with some of their pieces being very difficult to move. A player like Zach LaVine, a player like Lonzo Ball, although he's expiring, may still be very difficult to move, especially right now before anybody sees if he's ready to play. So when you look at something like that, you say, okay, well, I don't know if Chicago's in an advantageous position to negotiate a very good trade for themselves in general. So maybe we'd be able to pry that player away from them, since they need to do away with the win now timeline and kind of focus more on a Patrick Williams, Kobe White, Montes Buzelis timeline. Without DeMar DeRozan now in place, Zach LaVine seemingly on the move whenever they have an opportunity to move him, I think that Vucevic would be a piece that they would otherwise look to move right after that, or in this case, beforehand. So for me, it makes sense for Chicago to pry away from that player. Maybe someone outbids us for him, which makes all the sense in the world. But I also think the Lakers should be putting in their 2 cents, try to make that player a Laker, given the circumstances at hand and our need for centers. Even more so right now when we have 2 of our bigger players out with injury potentially to start the preseason. I don't know if that carries into the regular season, but you would think they wouldn't be 100% at the very least in Christian Wood and Vanderbilt. So that was my thought that could potentially be there, a solution that could potentially be possible. But the Lakers, we are in a situation where it wouldn't be in our best interest to move picks for that type of piece. We didn't draft that player because, of course, we had an opportunity at Dalton Connect, which I definitely support, as I said yesterday in the video. Not upset at that. I think that's the right move. But Anthony Davis is a very important part of what it is that we have going on, to say the least. And his intentions to play with a big is not just a preference thing, but I think it's a safety issue for him, having to go up against players that are so much heavier than him as he ages. If you want him to stay durable, it's in your best interest to make it so that he's not taking on physical contact that he's not necessary for him, that he's not better for. There's some big guys in this league, and the players are only getting bigger. You talk about some of the guys that just came into the draft, like Zach Edey and Klingon, Yves Missy. You don't want Anthony Davis having to bang up against those guys and the remaining guys that are still in the league at that size. It's too many big body players from a night-to-night basis for Anthony Davis to have to keep going against these guys. And he did have very, very little success against Jokic and no success against Sabonis. So at some point in time, we have to be respectful of that and help Anthony Davis help himself by taking him off of those players and allow for him to have success as an off-ball big, helping the other big who would otherwise be cooked by them dudes, which I think is a better play considering how gifted Anthony is in those situations. So I want the Lakers to consider this. I do like some of the players that we have. I don't know that in a nutshell I would be willing to sacrifice a Rui Hachimura for a big that may be available. But at this point, I think it might be necessary for us to give Anthony Davis what he's asking for before this tumbles forward to maybe us losing him. Because if he demands a trade, that's a very, very devastating thing for our organization on multiple fronts, and you just don't want to ever see it come to that. So that's what I'm saying to all of you guys. I think the Lakers should really think about sacrificing some guards. We have a lot of guards to get a big, and I don't think that that's too much to ask, even in the climate that's very difficult to move. You should sacrifice something to get yourself a piece of need that would ultimately make Anthony Davis happy, because this is what it really comes down to in my head right now. I've always made the argument that if we move certain pieces to bring in other pieces, we're opening up one hole and closing another. But if what's attached to the hole is an unhappy Anthony Davis who could potentially leave, then that's the hole you need to close. You understand what I'm saying? That's what it really comes down to. That's the hole you need to close. And so that it's not as simple as close one hole, open another. You just close one hole and the entire thing can bottom out. If you don't close the right hole, or if you leave open the hole that Anthony's complaining about. Because I tell you right now, we can't win 30 games without Anthony Davis. With respect to LeBron James, he does not affect winning like that anymore, and we cannot deny that. Anthony Davis is the most important defensive player we've had in a very long time. I want to say ever, to be honest with you. Might be the most important defensive player we've ever had in the history of our organization. There are some fantastic defensive players. A lot of these guys came before my time, but I don't think any of them are more talented than Anthony Davis defensively. And the sad thing is he's being exposed defensively because he's just simply not massive enough of a person physically to guard some of these people that he's responsible for guarding. Now, if he was able to comfortably put on another 50 pounds, then he would lock some of these dudes up. But that's not real. That's not what we can ask him to do, and that's putting him in positions to be seen lesser than what he is. And when you consider the fact that guys keep getting Defensive Player of the Year over him every year, it's time for our organization to put some priority on it, making Anthony Davis look better out there. So I think that it's worth it to move some pieces to keep him in a position to feel like he's still being prioritized properly. Not future assets. I'm not moving first rounders, but I think if I canvass the league long enough, I should be able to get a big without moving a first rounder. So that's really what it comes down to. I think that we need to start having some urgency about Anthony Davis's happiness here, because if he decides he wants to go elsewhere, it shouldn't be a problem for him to move, and if he does, it's going to be very difficult for you to get the most price for him. You can't let him get to the point where he's demanding a trade. So that's really what it comes down to, man. I think it's somewhat low-hanging fruit for me to say what I think happens or what I would want done if Anthony Davis were to become so unhappy as to ask for a trade. So let's just say I wouldn't have a whole lot of support for who's in place if that were to come to that. I wouldn't have a whole lot of support for who's in place. I've been very patient and I've been very understanding, and I still am. But him having to be traded at a fourth of his price because he's unhappy and now everybody knows it is not acceptable in any way, shape, or form. And I don't think the Lakers, as I talked about greatly in my rant yesterday, have done a good enough job of preventing the possibility of things going wrong well ahead of time. That's what I've been tasking them for in regards to firing coaches, not making certain decisions that ultimately could go wrong, and all these different things. I think they've been very poor in that area of preventing the possibility of things being completely bad. And we have realized the worst case scenario in several situations. And I just don't think this is one of them that you can afford to ever have happen. Some mistakes you cannot make once. Letting Anthony Davis become unhappy in uniform is one of those mistakes. They cannot happen. And so that's where I'm at with it, man. I'm happy with Anthony Davis as a player. He's probably the one player that I would be reluctant to move out of everything we have if I had a choice. If you told me to pick one player on this team that I cannot move, it's him for sure. Respect to LeBron James and the greatness of LeBron James, of whom I appreciate a great deal. And I know how much homage I'm supposed to pay to him. But it ain't no secret. Anthony Davis does too much for us on both sides of the floor for me to responsibly say that I would choose LeBron James at 40 years old over him. That's not real. And I don't think LeBron would ask me to do that. I don't think he would. But at the same time, I know LeBron has a lot of faith in his skills and faith in his body and faith in himself. And I don't take him lightly either when I say that. But at this point, Anthony Davis is the most important player as far as I am assessing things. So don't let it happen. Simply put, I don't mind if we move on from Anthony Davis, but I do mind if we're forced to move on from Anthony Davis. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, if it's within our will to get him on to another situation that's better for him, let it be under great circumstances for which he's happy to move. He was happy here, and we got the most for him. That's the only way that should ever happen. Otherwise, number 3 should be retiring a Laker, man. He really should. So please don't screw this up, is what I'll say to Rob Pelinka and Jeanie Buss. Please don't screw this up. This is the type of thing that you can't let happen at all. You can't let that happen. You will not replace Anthony Davis. And if you make him unhappy, don't underestimate what that looks like for another player who may want to come in trying to choose whether or not he wants to come here. You've already seen the trickle-down effect of people choosing away from us because of decisions we made. So let's not make that happen here with this particular player. So, yeah, man, do what you got to do to get a big, so long as you're not giving up first-round picks. And I know people are going to demand us of those, but, we're not aiming for the moon here. We're not asking for the greatest players at the position. We're just asking for somebody to come in and be able to play that role for Anthony Davis so he doesn't have to keep on pushing up against the Sabonis's and the Jokic's and the Klingons and all these players that are going to be in front of him. He should not be asked to do that. And if for some reason we bring the player in and the player gets hurt and Anthony still has to do that, at least we know we did what we were supposed to do to ensure that Anthony's needs were met. If it doesn't pan out, anybody can get hurt at any time. There's nothing you can really do about that. But at least you don't have Anthony Davis saying you didn't do for me what I asked you to do. And so that's really where I'm at with it, man. I don't think the Los Angeles Lakers are in the greatest position to be a contender until they have that piece in place. Period, man. I don't know if Valanciunas is the answer. Getting him from Washington, I'm kind of against that. I don't like that they paid him knowing that they ain't going to be any good, knowing that he's a win-now player likely wanting to go somewhere else. I wasn't a fan of that. But he chose to go there, and so, it wasn't like they were going to push him away necessarily at all. But he should have signed with a contender instead of doing this, in my opinion. But for now, we'll see what happens with him. Hopefully for his sake, he doesn't have a injury-prone season that will keep him stuck in Washington. The type of risk the player makes when he signs a contract with a bad team, knowing what his age is and his timeline. But it is what it is, man. We're here waiting for the season to start, and we don't have a big, man. And the guys that we otherwise put in positions to be big are hurt. And Vanderbilt, although he doesn't play the big spot, he's still a long body that can help with circumstances. He's a better off-ball defender for players that Anthony has to guard against, so he can have better double-team situations on those players with Vanderbilt on the floor, neutralizing threats on the ring a lot more. So it overall helps Anthony's job when Vanderbilt is 100%. He's not. And, of course, we talked about several times how good we looked with Christian Wood and Anthony Davis on the floor at the same time, even though in small sample sizes because Darvin. But nevertheless, it worked for us, and he's hurt. So we got to get that piece, man. It would have been great if we could have been the team that landed Ware. I think Ware would have been a perfect player to slot next to Anthony Davis, traditional like-bodied player with long arms, high motor. I don't know that he would have been able to guard any of those people either, but I would feel like putting him on those players would give Anthony Davis a breather. Yves Messi was on the board. We left him there. I wasn't against that. I'm not a big Yves Messi guy. He ended up in New Orleans. We'll see what happens there. But, you never had a chance to Clingan or Zach Edey. As I said right before the draft, I thought that Zach Edey was going to go in the top 10, and he did. He absolutely did. So, that was my hope that we landed him, and it just wasn't possible. But the Lakers could, some may think the Lakers may have been able to trade up. I don't know if that was possible in the first round, but, we didn't get a big. However it looked, we didn't get a big, man. And now we continue to sign players, role-playing guys and back-of-the-bench guys who aren't big. And that, I think, is probably what fueled maybe this irritation that I think Anthony might be feeling. It's like you picking up guards and stuff. You're still picking up more guards. But like, you can't find a center anywhere. There's nobody in this world that you can put at that position at a discount price that's not going to affect you. Like, that seems like somebody's not doing their due diligence to assure that we fill the role, man. Rather than it being impossible to find a big, there are people out there who want opportunities. If I were them, and I know that this guy's blackballed for reasons that are off the court stuff, but at this point, and I know this sounds stupid to a lot of people, but I probably would have signed Dwight Howard. I probably would have. And brought him to the situation to stop the bleeding on the big man circumstance. And as soon as it was best for me to move on from Dwight, I'd probably move on from Dwight. I don't know if he's in game shape. I don't know if that's a real thing. But, like, that's the type of stuff you got to do when you don't have any flexibility. That's what you have to do when everybody knows you need a big and wants you to pay double for theirs. You got to do stuff that doesn't really help fully, but at least it'll stop the bleeding. And for as thin as we are at that big man position and as expensive it is to find bigs, you got a Hall of Fame guy who may be over the hump, may got some issues off the court, who's begging to be a part of your organization. It's like, I don't understand why Rob Pelinka doesn't see that as a job-saving solution. I really don't. But at the same time, it's like, I understand that it's understood that Dwight's he's well past his prime. Everything that's been said about him, he ain't exactly denied a lot of that. So I can see why people don't want him in the locker room. But who can deny that he helped us win a championship when he did? And we moved on from him, and however that situation went, and we ain't really replaced him with a center since. We ain't had an adequate center in place since then. So, if you can't canvas the world for a damn center, that might be your last best bet. And look, if it keeps Anthony Davis in place, why would I not consider it, If it keeps him from being unhappy, it should probably be done. And I don't doubt there are other centers you could probably find, but like I said, if there's no one else, what the hell are we doing? That's what it really comes down to. So I think there probably is some people out there. I just think the Lakers aren't enthused about bringing them in, and I don't understand it. Because I tell you right now, even if the guy ain't that great, I still need him on my team right now. Bruno Fernando's a name that keeps coming to mind, bro. He got waived a couple weeks ago. I ain't heard him sign with nobody. From what I understand, the young fella, Kenneth Lofton, just signed another two-way with the Philadelphia 76ers. They waived him a couple months ago. He was with Utah. They waived him too. It's like, I don't know why the hell he ain't a Laker. When we've had interest in him the whole time, we know he's good. We know he's big. You just got to do something to help yourself, man. And I respect bringing in Jordan Goodwin. I think he's going to be a nice guard. But I don't know that you should have prioritized signing anybody over someone at the center position within our circumstances. I don't think you should have. PDF 44. I thank you all for watching. I'm out.